Good morning. Please join us as we sing together.
Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where we strive together to build beloved community and to nurture the individual spirit. Welcome to all those gathered here and all those joining via live stream. How wonderful it is for all of us to be together on this September day to pause and reflect and worship in, among, and as community. After the service, please join fellow congregants for social hour. To join virtually, you'll see a QR code after the service. And to join in person, please find your way down to Buchan Hall. Registration will be open for our social justice gather-in next Saturday, September 24th from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. If social justice is an important part of your spirituality, this no-cost gathering is for you. Whether you're an active member of our social justice groups or exploring how your values for justice can be put into action, please join us in person for a day of community building, learning, and fun. Please see the Front Steps e-news for a registration link. Also, our Get Out the Vote partnership with our UU siblings in North Carolina is now underway after a lively kickoff this week, where we saw many of your faces. You can pick up and write letters before and after the service to help us reach our church's goal of 10,000 letters by the end of October. Please also register for Thursday, 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. phone banking from your home as a part of the Carolina Jews and UU's Faith in Action phone bank through the midterm elections. No prior experience is necessary and training will be provided. You only need access to a phone and a computer to participate, but if this is a barrier, please reach out to our ministry team. First Unitarian will host the September 29th Zoom phone bank, and if we get 20 folks from our congregation to join on that day, Dero Farrar, our director of music, will dye his hair blue. Thank you for offering up your follicles, Duro. Help us turn out the vote and turn Duro's hair blue. Registration information is in the e-news. Also, mark your calendars. 1 week from today, on Sunday, September 25th, we'll be having a First Unitarian Church animal blessing service on Sunday afternoon. Mark yours and your pet's calendars for that event, rather. We hope to see you all there. Now let's take a moment to greet one another this morning. Use the chat option if you're online, and if in person, please greet each other now. Lots of energy in the sanctuary this morning. I'd now like to invite Reverend Alison Miller to light the chalice. If you're joining us from home, I invite you to light your own chalice or candle if you have one.
We light this chalice, or I'm doing the one from the other church.
We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
We gather today on World Water Monitoring Day to awaken our minds and hearts and spirits to our connection to the waters, which are a part of us and without which we could not survive. We gather in this time of fires and drought, of floods and storms, to prepare ourselves to side with love in word and deed. We gather in the full knowledge that it is already too late to prevent climate change. But that is not an excuse not to begin or to continue to clean our waterways, to prevent creatures from extinction, to limit our consumption, to hold politicians, corporations, and ourselves accountable to an ethic of what is good to the 7th generation. For these changes will preserve life, will preserve hope, will preserve our humanity, and that will make all the difference. We acknowledge that the Portland metro area rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River, creating communities and summer encampments to harvest and use the plentiful natural resources of the area. We take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land. And if I mispronounced any name from here, my new home, please do correct me following the service. It is so important that we acknowledge their leadership and their presence, and pronunciation matters.
Soul
With this we know, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. All things are connected. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Attributed to Chief Noah Sealth. Will you join in our doxology? I would love to invite our entire Board of Trustees to come forward. Ryan is going to join me up here, and I invite the other board members to be in front where you can be seen and recognized. Today, we install the members of our Board of Trustees as they begin another year of service in our congregation. And first, I would like to introduce Ryan, and I want to make sure Dybert, right? Good, Dybert, who has been elected to serve as moderator of our board, and Theo Harper and Caitlin Hill, who have been elected to serve as vice moderators. Caitlin's right over there. And now I turn it over to Ryan.
In our day-to-day lives, most of us know many forms of governance. The systems and structures that direct our workplaces, our local, state, and federal governments, even the informal and often unstated relationships that guide our lives together in family and close community. As someone who has served on your Board of Trustees, now entering into my 5th year, let me tell you that I and your fellow board members love the sacred work of the governance of this church. Ours is a freely chosen, open, and mutually supportive community of faith, striving together to make justice real and to create the beloved community, knowing that this work is central in our congregational lives together. In our system of governance, the members of this congregation make the major decisions about our shared congregational life. As we very recently experienced with our calling of Reverend Alison, the members call our senior minister. Our congregation's members also elect the Board of Trustees and the nominating committee and approve any changes to the bylaws of the church. Those bylaws call for our senior minister and their executive team to manage the day-to-day affairs of the church under the general oversight of the board and within the bounds of governing policies established by the board. This work requires deep and ongoing partnership among the ministers, the board, and the nominating committee to collaboratively lead the church, rooted in loving, trusting, and covenantal relationship. Our board policies direct us to govern with an emphasis on vision, strategic leadership, oversight of the organization's affairs, clear distinction between the board and administrative roles, open communication and information sharing, encouragement of diversity of viewpoints, and collaborative decision-making. Some of that work is very technical in nature. There are budgets to review, evaluations of our collective ministry to conduct, but I and our fellow board members find our work in the governance of this church to be deeply spiritual work in service to this congregation that we love. We are grateful for this opportunity that you have given us.
And so the members of our Board of Trustees come before this congregation to be installed. Will you each say your first name, starting over here and moving down the line? Do you, our board members, pledge to serve to the best of your abilities? Do you pledge to serve the larger mission of this church and to be a faithful steward of this congregation? If so, please say, "We do." And do you, members and friends of this congregation, pledge to support these board members that you have elected in their service? If so, please answer, "We do." We do. Let us pray. Spirit of life, we come to this day in thanks for all who helped to build this, our beloved community. Today, as we install the members of our Board of Trustees for another term of service, may they, in their service, be faithful to the mission of this congregation. May they lead with open hearts and open minds. May they always know that they do this work not alone, but in service of something greater. May they be faithful, loving stewards to the members and friends and visitors here and not yet here. And may their service be filled with love and hope and joy. Amen. And we express all our gratitude to each and every single one of you. And we promise to show up with you throughout this year. You may be seated.
For the 2022-2023 church year, First Unitarian dedicates our monthly offerings to organizations led by youth and/or committed to youth leadership development. Throughout the year, our YRUU high schoolers will help decide which organizations will be our monthly shared plate partners, consistent with the values and issues about which our youth care deeply. For the month of September, we share our offering with Sunrise Movement PDX. Sunrise began with a group of young people heeding the call to create a space in Portland's climate justice community for youth to come together and uplift each other's voices. Last June, at our UUA General Assembly, we partnered with a project of Sunrise called Youth versus ODOT in their fight for a rapid decarbonization of our state's transportation systems. Our shared offering this month will support the collaboration between Sunshine Movement PDX and the Portland Youth Climate Strike for their mass action this fall. If you'd like to give to our offering today, and you're watching online, look for the QR code or find the donate button on Boxcast. If you are in person, you can find that code in the yellow slip of paper in the chairs around you. And if you'd like to donate cash or check, please find an usher after the service. Our offering will now be gratefully received. We hold space each week in our service to name the concerns and celebrations that arise in community life. We are a community that offers care and support to one another, and pastoral support happens in a number of ways. Through our ministers and through a dedicated team of lay ministers who offer one-on-one support, as well as facilitating small groups where congregants can offer support to one another. They also hold intentions in prayer each week. If you are here in person, you can light a candle of intention in one of our side galleries and write down your prayer intention and place it in the container provided. Online, you can send an intention to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. I'd like to share a few concerns and sorrows. I'm sorry to report that longtime member Fritzi Frager died unexpectedly on Tuesday evening when she suffered a catastrophic brain bleed that was caused by a ruptured vein. This happened when she was at her monthly book club, and she died a few hours later. Fritzi was 79 years old, and she leaves her husband, Larry, as well as 4 children, Paul, Emily, Neil, and Chris. Emily attended church most Sundays with Fritzi and Larry. We wish them peace and resilience and hold them all in our hearts at this time of loss. Also, an update from the Vinson family from last week. 4 weeks ago, Gary Vinson, husband and member Kathleen, and grandfather to members Scott, Jenny, and Oscar Vinson, had to have emergency surgery to address an obstructed bowel while on vacation in Wallowa County. Since that time, there have been many complications, and Gary entered hospice care. In Jenny's words, "The time is now for us to be still and give Gary the peaceful, graceful exit that he deserves." We know that there are many more concerns and many more joys, some known, some carried in silence. We honor and hold space for all of those unspoken but deeply felt and lift our hearts in joy and in sorrow and solidarity with all of our families, our neighborhoods, and our communities near and far. Will you join me now in a prayer? God of many names and of no name, Spirit of love, Spirit of dark earth, of glacial streams and ancient forests, you, tender of becoming, of ending, of returning, hear our prayers this day. As we enter this time of turning of the seasons, as the days grow cooler and shorter, may we be reminded too that our time likewise is finite. Our days too will eventually grow short and dark. Guide us in using this precious resource, this blessing of time in service of love, that highest good, recognizing that we are all linked together on one earth, under one sky. May these precious, ever-lessening days of ours be filled with wonder, with compassion, with noticing, with friends, with lovers, with laughter, with learning. May we hold them precious as gems, use them to serve others, then let them go, returning into the earth, one into the next, so that when we are done, our lives shine like the miracles they are, glints of amber, amethyst, diamond, ruby, quartz, and the dark of the soil, sunlight shimmering on endless water, all miracles on and of this blue earth. Let us be in silence together, connected in breath, in space, for a holy moment. Our reading today is an excerpt from A Message for the World by Chief Arval Looking Horse. Our ancestors foretold that water would someday be for sale. Back then, this was hard to believe since the water was so plentiful, so pure, and so full of energy, nutrition, and spirit. Today, we have to buy pure water, and even then, the nutritional minerals have been taken out. It's just empty liquid. Someday, water will be like gold, too expensive to afford. Not everyone will have the right to drink safe water. We fail to appreciate and honor our sacred sites, ripping out the minerals and gifts that lay underneath them, as if Mother Earth were simply a resource instead of the source of life itself. In our prophecies, it is told that we are now at the crossroads, either unite spiritually as a global nation or be faced with chaos, disasters, diseases, and tears from our relatives' eyes. This new millennium will usher in an age of harmony, or it will bring the end of life as we know it. Starvation, war, and toxic waste have been the hallmark of the great myth of progress and development that ruled the last millennium. To us, as caretakers of the heart of Mother Earth, falls the responsibility of turning back the powers of destruction. You, yourself, are the one who must decide. You alone, and only you, can make this crucial choice to walk in honor or to dishonor your relatives. On your decision depends the fate of the entire world. Each of us put here in this time and place to personally decide the future of humankind. Did you think the Creator would create unnecessary people in a time of such terrible danger? Know that you yourself are essential to this world. Understand both the blessing and the burden of that. You yourself are desperately needed to save the soul of this world. Did you think you were put here for something less? In a sacred hoop of life, there is no beginning and no ending.
every stress and anxiety, it is gone. When I enter your rest, when I enter your rest, early in the morning I'll seek your face. I find my life in the fullness of your joy. Every stress and anxiety, it is gone. When I enter your rest, when I enter your rest, I find my life in you. My peace is complete. Oh, oh, oh. My faith is refreshed. I'm telling you that I am surrounded by the power of your love. I find my life in you. My peace is complete. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, my faith is refreshed. I'm telling you that I am surrounded by the power of your love, by the power of your love, by the power of your love. I am surrounded. I am surrounded by the power of your love, by the power of your love. I am surrounded. I am surrounded by your love, by your love, by your love, by the power of your love, by the power of your love, by your love, by your love. I am surrounded. I am surrounded.
Almost 6 years ago, my husband and I traveled to North Dakota in response to the invitation from Chief Arvil Looking Horse for faith leaders to come to Camp Ochedi-Shakowin and stand with the Standing Rock Sioux. We were not alone. Thousands showed up for an interfaith day of prayer. We arrived a week early to volunteer for supply runs to help prepare and to participate in the teach-ins and the actions culminating in that day. As the sun peeked over the horizon, we gathered around the sacred fire in the sacred circle for a water blessing ceremony led by our hosts. The service opened with prayers, chants, and reflections led by elders of the Ochedi-Shakowin, the 7 council fires, the Standing Rock Sioux. And then other Native peoples were invited to add their prayers and voices to the mix. Speakers reminded us that we and the earth are both about 70% water. Our first birthplace was the watery womb where each of us was carried before arriving on dry land. At one point, the water gathered at rivers both near and far, cooled by the morning air, were poured into mini Dixie cups and handed to everyone present. As I sipped and savored the portion that was mine, I was conscious of the feeling as the cool water rolled along my tongue and slid down my throat towards my stomach. I was grateful for those cool sips on an ice-cold morning in a way that I too often forget to be, with a whole pitcher of water in the backyard on a summer day. After 2 sips, I felt such an awareness of abundance that I looked around for someone who had been missed and handed off my cup to a man in the row of people behind me. He smiled as he took the gift and brought the refreshing last sips to his lips. After a while, the members of the circles passed around the sacred fire and slowly proceeded towards the water's edge, down the makeshift street lined with flags, which represented the hundreds of nations and tribes who were moving with the Standing Rock Sioux. As we marched and rolled along, we sang songs that honored our connection to the water that flows in us and through us and flows around our world. The songs represented the diverse gathering of people, thousands strong at the camp, and included Native American chants that I had never heard before, and chants familiar to Unitarian Universalists like "The river is flowing." "Water is life" was proclaimed in many, many languages. Mini Wiconi, lo evi, el agua es la vida. When we arrived at the water's edge, more prayers were shared and tobacco was offered to the Cannonball River. The smells of burning plants filled the air as they did at ceremonies throughout the week, burning sage, juniper, and cedar. Then the leaders organized the people who identified as men to form a receiving bridge on the outside, as the people who identified as women moved slowly together towards the frozen river. It's important to acknowledge that certainly not everyone identifies with the gender binary, and that even in spaces like Camp Ocheti Shakowin, moving towards liberation, there are clear moments of the work that remains to be done. As we passed through the beginning of this human bridge, it was lovely and powerful to feel received by people on the right and left as our gloved hands touched. By the end, we crossed a narrow dock towards the river, and we had need of their steadying presence, especially as we leaned into the river to offer our own bit of tobacco and our prayers. Once the last person reached the water, the sides were switched, and we received and held the others on their journey towards the river's edge. All throughout this ceremony, we continued to sing and chant in different languages. The service lasted about 2 hours, and by the end, I have to tell you, my feet were completely numb. I moved quickly to find a campfire, and luckily there were many. I tell you, in the harsh Dakota plains in winter, you are deeply conscious of what gives life and what may take it away. Every morning at the camp began in prayer and in gratitude by invoking blessings upon the water and upon us who come from the water. Camp Ocheti Shakowin is and was a ceremonial camp that has been called into being over the centuries. Every inch of land is considered holy. Everywhere we walked while in the camp was part of an outdoor temple. which may be a point easily missed by those of us that come from cultures that have severed our connection to the earth. For centuries, that particular site has been deemed sacred. This was sensed enough by Native Americans from differing tribes that even when tribes were in conflict, that land was set aside for prayer and peace. Fighting would cease the moment they crossed the threshold until they reached the other side. When Camp Oceti-Sakowin comes into being, it is a place of prayer without ceasing. All of us were asked to carry ourselves as we would in a place of worship and to follow the customs of the Standing Rock Sioux. For those who identified as women, we were asked to wear a skirt or a dress the entire time. Some disregarded the request, some didn't know about it, and others did so in the name of feminism. But we were invited, especially those of us who identified as white women, which I do, to decenter ourselves and to follow the lead of the leaders of this camp. At the orientation, a woman who lived there, a member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, explained that in her culture, the skirt was a symbol that set women apart as being valued. So I chose that week to follow her lead, and like her, wore wool long johns under fleece pants and a brown floral skirt on top. For me, wearing a skirt in such a harsh winter landscape did alter my relationship to the moment. I was clearly not winter camping. I was joining a pilgrimage founded to fortify spiritual resistance, resilience, and revolution. Camp Oceti-Sakowin and Standing with Standing Rock was and is foremost about spiritual resistance, about indigenous rights, and about stewardship of our earth in that order. It was the first time the Oceti-Sakowin, the 7 council fires of the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, had gathered since 1850. It was and remains an invitation to awakening and a sharing of the spiritual traditions from one generation with the next. It wasn't just the morning that began in ceremony and prayer. Throughout the day, gatherings, meetings, mealtimes, and planned nonviolent actions were grounded in an awareness of the Creator and our relationship to the land, to one another, and the water. The 7 Lakota values served as the foundation for everything we did. They are prayer, respect, compassion, honesty, generosity, humility, and wisdom. Too often, non-Native peoples speak of Native traditions as lost wisdom and practice from the past that, quote, we wish to reclaim. But this is a conquest perspective. It renders invisible the Native Americans of this land who are still present throughout our country and who have living, breathing traditions that we are wise to include in interfaith gatherings and wisdom. We who do not come from Native American heritage do not own and should not bend Native American traditions to fit our will, but we can learn from one another and share with one another from our respective traditions and allow ourselves to be transformed by that exchange of wisdom. The Interfaith Day of Prayer was December 4th, and by then there were Indigenous leaders from every corner of the earth and representatives across many of the world's religions. Along with religious leaders were thousands of veterans who were invited for a special action the next day. The numbers had swelled to 15,000 people at the camp. Somehow, The firewood, the food, and the fellowship stretched to encompass the additional presence of so many guests, leaning into our differences and learning about our commonalities. Part of the recipe that allowed this to work is that those who usually experience the greatest privilege because of race, gender, or religion were willing to practice stepping back and being led by others. Camp Ocheti Shakowin was and is a vision, a movement led by Indigenous peoples about Indigenous rights. In a very real sense, the fight is about drawing a line and saying you can go no farther. In the Treaty of 1851, the Sioux tribe was given a span of land that is theirs and not to be interfered with by the United States. Not only is the Dakota Access Pipeline dangerous to the water supply of the reservation, it is and remains an illegal move on the part of the United States. Stopping the Dakota Access Pipeline was and is about 500 years of broken promises that were made between the United States and Native Americans. Our country is continuing a program of domination and genocide connected to religion, racism, land ownership, and water. Sadly, this is an example of how dangerous it is when corporations gain a vote and a stronger voice in our political systems. The land that Energy Transfer Partners and Sunoco were drilling towards isn't owned by the US, and might makes right is not a moral stance no matter who is elected president. In the camp, I want to share, we practiced focusing on Indigenous rights by centering the voices and the ideas of the Standing Rock Sioux first, then other Native peoples, then people of color, and last, people who identified as white. And everyone did have a chance to share. We experienced the reverse of the typical order in the world beyond Ocheti Shakowin, and we tasted the beloved community where none are left out. Camp Ocheti Shakowin is a movement about stewardship of our earth and protecting the water. It's also a youth-led movement, and one for us to be aware of, as youth-led movements are a focus for channeling our resources this year. In 2016, what kicked off the camp was a 1,000-mile youth relay that brought petitions from North Dakota to Washington, D.C. And just last year, many of those youth, some now young adults, ran again to D.C., asking Biden to shut down the Dakota Access Pipeline, to be faithful to his word, to be a president focused on climate. One of those runners, Iyanko Shui, spoke of participating in 2016 and again last year. Running is prayer, she said. We laid our footsteps down on the earth and awakened a common sense that we all belong. She shared that when they originally left for DC, the camp was completely empty, and when they returned, it was filled for months. The second run, as I shared, was to Biden recently, and she shared this. Every morning, the first thing I do is wake up and hear my daughters asking for a cup of water. It is a basic human right. And if something happens with that pipeline, it could be 5 minutes until our water is contaminated. There is a report due out this month, but I believe it's late, from the Army Corps of Engineers on the impacts of the pipeline, which has already had several spills. But the government has hired ERM as their consultants, a firm financially tied to the oil industry. How likely is it that their report will be impartial. And so the Sioux have backed away from what they believe is an unfair process, and they have done that, so we will pay attention. Segments of the outside world define the Standing Rock Sioux as protesters, but they call themselves water protectors. As Chief Arvil Looking Horse shared, Mother Earth is sick with a fever and disease. And we are being invited to participate in a movement to heal our earth and our relationship with the earth and one another. At an Ojibwe delegation, an elder shared about a long ago prophecy where people had gathered, and he had predicted a time when people would sell water to one another. And everyone at the gathering laughed because it seemed so preposterous. But it doesn't seem preposterous for those living in 2022. It is the world that we've created and our children are inheriting. Clean water is no longer a human right, but a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. It's becoming a source of war and death rather than the source of life and birth. And right here in Oregon, we have challenges on this front. 88% of our public schools had detectable lead in their water at the same time that folks were gathering at Oceti Shakoween. And I know the parents will remember that Grant High School had a test that was 4 times higher than the highest levels found in Flint, Michigan. Last month, there is a new research that shows that we have made great improvements, but until every school has safe drinking water, we are not done. And what about when those children go home? The State of Water Justice in Oregon published last month that there are people living in our state that do not have access to safe plumbing and drinking water at home. Worldwide, there are over 2 billion people who have no access to clean, safe drinking water. Kat Brigham, chair of the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, said this: "Our people used to drink straight out of the Columbia River. After the dams went in the 50s and industry increased, we started to get sick. Now tribal elders say you couldn't pay them to drink out of the Columbia, our historic lifeline." Or look at what's happening in Ukraine, which is being fought in part over hydropolitics. Following Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, a place that had resources, Ukraine dammed up the northern Crimean Canal. One of the first things that happened after the Russian invasion was that they blew up that dam because 2 million residents in Crimea had become water stressed, and Russia was losing hold over the area. Figuring out a way for all of us to share the precious resource of water is necessary to building a lasting peace. And right here where we live, we have similar tensions. The federal government closed the water supply from a part of the Klamath River on the California-Oregon border to protect fish and the rights of Native American tribes. And there are a group of farmers that depend on that for irrigation in this time of severe drought. And they've threatened to reopen the water supply by force if the government can't find a solution they find satisfactory. We have to share the precious resource of water in a way that promotes the well-being of 7 generations if we are to have lasting peace everywhere on the earth. Although the halting of the Dakota Access Pipeline was short-lived, I carry in my heart a vision of the moment when we received the news that indeed it would be stopped. It was the very moment when we had fully encircled the camps with our prayers on December 4th, with thousands of peacemakers from every tradition and thousands of veterans. Just imagine peaceniks and veterans holding hands, Muslims and Jews, Christians and indigenous religious leaders holding hands, just when we managed to encircle the entire camp, when no flag was left out. At that moment, the town crier arrived and said the Army Corps was halting the Dakota Access Pipeline. It happened because we followed the lead of Camp Ocheti Shakowin, a movement where we practiced showing up for each other and our Mother Earth. A movement of spiritual fortification, of resistance, of resilience, and revolution. We glimpsed what is possible when we hold hands with one another in prayer and in action. Destructive projects can be stopped. We can forge a new way, or better expressed, we can return to the teachings of those who first inhabited and continue to promote these teachings across the land. It requires all of us bending the moral arc of the universe with the weight of our love in action. So do not lose hope, my friends. We are living in a moment of awakening. Let us push forward with every fiber of our being. Let us reach to the left and the right, behind and in front of us, all the way until indeed we encircle all the living. Our prayer is that we move through this land as if every inch of it is a temple. By doing so, may our deeds and our lives restore the waters and heal the earth and humanity. Amen, and blessed be, and may it be so. and now in our going. May the light of love bless us and keep us. May it shine down upon us. May it radiate out from within us. May it be gracious unto us, and may it grow our ability to choose life. For this is the day that we are given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Amen.